Hey everyone. Usually, there's a good number of people when we start Prime who have no experience with a Mac. I remember when I was in that boat and how confusing it was. So, I'm recording this to help you get oriented and stay organized on a Mac. Keeping organized is going to be one of the keys to success that is difficult in early tier one. And I'm going to dive into a little bit about why. With that, start off by sharing a resource on our webpage here under the frequently asked questions in the upper right. If you click on preparing for Prime and then choose what should I do before I start the full stack program, that's our program. One, you should probably just read all this if you haven't, but there's this link here, macOS Getting Started Guide. For sure, if you're not already a Mac user, you should read through this. It's filled with valuable tips and tricks. It has pictures and videos. It has links to other resources. This is a great thing to read through when you're first starting, again in a week or two, and then use as a reference whenever you need to. It kind of has two main goals. One, just get you oriented with the terminology of using a Mac so we have a shared language. And two, help you understand a little bit about how the computer is organized and how to think about it. What do I mean by that? Well, like all computers, we use the Mac to store stuff. And then we need to open that stuff or save new stuff. But we have two different programs to do it. We have Terminal here on the right, which is what we use a lot for our coding. And then we have Finder here on the left. They do the same thing. They let us interact with the programs on our computer. They let us save files. They let us open things. They have two big differences. One, Finder is a graphical program. It has pictures. You can click on things. You can run an application just by clicking on it. Terminal, on the other hand, is all text-based. So we don't see anything but text. We can't use our mouse, really. We do typing. So that's different. One is just how we interact with it. The second big difference is this is really annoying and the source of so much confusion. When I open Terminal, I am immediately automatically in a location on my computer called the home directory. Versus when I open Finder, I already did some clicking around, so it doesn't show it, but I start off in my documents directory. That means these tools that do the same thing, let us interact with the stuff on our computer, when you open them up, you start in a different place on your computer. What do I mean by different place? Well, like all computers, we can think of the information on our computer in a structured way, a hierarchy of folders and files. At the top is just our computer or our hard drive, our hard disk. Different computers use different terms for it. We have a folder called users, and in that we have a folder named after our username. We also call this the home folder. And then that tends to be where all the interesting stuff lives. Now, you can see here my desktop, my downloads, my documents, but you don't really see how it relates to the other things. In Terminal, you don't see any of it, but if you do PWD, which stands for Present Working Directory, it'll show you not only the folder you're in, but the entire hierarchy all the way down. So we start off at /, we call that the root, that's the top. That's basically my hard drive. In there is a folder called users, and in there is my home folder. So I can see I have the top level, the user folder, and then me. So I start off here in my home folder. And I can see in there my desktop, my documents, downloads, by doing something called ls, which stands for list, and that'll show me everything in my current folder. I can see desktop, downloads, I can see all the other stuff I have. There's also a little bit of a shortcut built in, which is that this prompt, this little place that indicates where I'm typing, tells me not the whole hierarchy, not everything in my folder, but at least tells me the name of the folder I'm in, right here. Now you might be saying, hey, what's going on here? You said if I say pwd for present working directory, it'll say I'm in this folder, which is in this folder, which is in my hard drive. But this, a harassmu, and this are not the same thing. Well, we use our home folder so much and it's so important that there's a little shortcut, tilde. Tilde means the same thing as home folder. So if I'm anywhere else on my computer, let me do a change directory, cd, and I'll go into slash, I'll just go into slash. I'm at the very top of my computer. For interest, I can see all the stuff that's here. This is all stuff I don't want to mess with because I might break my computer. If I want to go back to my home directory, I can cd, change directory, and I can tell my computer, okay, start at the top of my computer, go into users, and then go into a harassmu, and I get there. One thing of note, when you're working in terminal, it's what's called case sensitive, so capital matters. If I had done this, users a harassmu, instead of a capital U on the users here, which matches what my actual folder is called, you can take a look when we did our ls above and see we had a capital U for users. If you don't get the capitalization right, things get wonky. So you really do want to pay attention to that. Anyway, I was able to get here by telling the computer change directories and go here. And it worked. I'm back to the tilde. If I do pwd, I see I'm back home. I'm going to leave again. And pwd here at the top just shows I'm at the top. I can also, as a shortcut, get back to my home folder just by doing cd and then the tilde. Enter. pwd, I'm back home. So one thing to know is that little squiggle is a shorthand. Anywhere you want to talk about your home directory, it's going to get you there. All right, so that's directories. A little bit about how to navigate between them in terminal. We start out here, and we can go down into any of these other ones. I highly recommend when you're in your home folder, you make a new directory. You can do mkdir for make directory, essentially creating a new folder. And give it a name like Prime or Acadia or whatever makes sense to you. Hit enter. I'm going to do ls to list everything. And I can see my fancy new Acadia folder. And then I would recommend saving all your work in there. So now whenever I'm going to work on Prime stuff, I'll open terminal, which brings me to home. I'll do cd Acadia. And then here's where I would do my git clone and then put in any links. And then all of my work will show up in this folder. And that's great in terminal. But chances are you use your computer for other things and you want to be able to see all your Prime stuff with Finder. There's not even a home folder here. What the heck? How do I get up a level in Finder? Well, if you have Finder open and you click on View, you want to toggle on the path bar here, show path bar. You should only have to do this once. And what that's going to do, if you look at the bottom of my screen right now in Finder, you'll notice that there's nothing special going on. But when I click that view, show path bar, I get something that's very similar to what I get with pwd in terminal. I get something that shows me where I am and the whole hierarchy down. So I'm right now in downloads, which is in my home directory, which is in users, which is in my hard drive. It's a little confusing because here in Finder, we call hard drive Macintosh HD, and back in terminal, it's just slash. So it's kind of like the thing at the top. Same idea. Thing at the top, users, a harassmu downloads. So how do I go up a level? Well, I like to go into something that's in my home folder. So go into desktop or documents, or right now we're in downloads. That forces the computer to show down here, now that I've toggled on showing my path bar, it shows my home folder. I can click it, hold down the mouse button, and drag a shortcut up to here. Now, wherever I am on my computer, I can very easily get to my home directory. And I see my home directory in Finder. Let me go back to my home directory in terminal. I can make it a little bit bigger too. If I do ls here, I see the same things. So now we have a little bit of sense because we can use both tools to do the same thing, but we know a little bit more about how to navigate them and get to the same places. There's a chance that you've already created a folder called Prime in both your home directory and maybe your downloads or your documents because you didn't have a way to get to your home directory before in Finder. If that's the case, or if you're having a lot of trouble, if things seem like they keep appearing and disappearing, check it out. Check out and see, do I have a folder where I've been doing my work set up in my home directory because I was working in terminal? And then did I do another one somewhere else because I was using Finder for a bit and had no way to get to the home directory? I actually tend to go one step further. And now that I've created a folder in my home directory for all my work, I'll pin that to the sidebar too. And in fact, let me open this and let me go into Cadia here. If you don't know about tab completion, whenever you're in terminal and you're starting to type something, if you hit tab on the keyboard, it'll autocomplete, which is really handy. If it could have multiple matches, like if I start typing capital D, tab won't know, does he mean desktop or downloads or documents even? So when you hit tab, it'll give you an option. Sorry, I did that twice in a row. Let me clear CD, D. I'm going to hit tab to try and autocomplete once. It's not going to autocomplete the first time. It's going to say, here are the options. I don't know which one you want. If I hit tab again, it's just going to choose the first one, which may or may not be what I want. So autocomplete, if you only have one option, it's awesome. If you have more than one option, it's still pretty cool. So I'm going to go into my Cadia folder. And then I like to set up a folder for week 1, mkdir, week 1. Now you might be tempted to put a space because it makes sense. That's how we write. With command line stuff, command line means a way you interact with your computer like by typing. So with terminal, we don't generally like spaces because they're a pain to work with. So we tend to use underscores instead. And I can see that appeared here. I can do the same thing here by right-clicking and doing new folder and set up a space for all my work for week 2. And if I want to see everything in terminal, I can type ls for list and I can see everything in that file folder. All right, so that's a bit about the folder structure, getting these two tools in sync, setting up an organized workspace, and some of the common commands. We covered pwd, which is present working directory. In other words, where am I? You should always see the folder you're in as part of your prompt, but pwd will show you the entire pathway down, the entire hierarchy to get where you are. And in fact, now I'm in Cadia. We also talked about ls, which lists everything in the directory you're in. Basically, show me what's here. We talked about cd, which is our way to hop around. If you are in a folder and there's stuff inside of it, you can just do cd and give it the name of that stuff. I used tab completion there and it stopped as soon as I had a choice. I was like week and it was like, okay, cool. Week underscore, wait, 1 or 2. If I hit tab again, it's like, seriously, man, week 1 or 2. All right, week 1. Cool. I can cd, ... is a shortcut to cd up 1 level. I can mkdir to make a directory. Week 3. There's also another one. I'm making lots of directories, but I haven't made any files. If I wanted to make a file like, let's say, maybe a text file, maybe something called index.html, I can use the command touch. Touch means make a file as opposed to mkdir, which is make a directory. So I could touch index.html, and now I have an index file here. It's empty. If I go back here and I open it up, it's a blank page. There's nothing in it yet, but at least I have a file. All right. There's one last thing to cover about Macs for orientation, and that is what the heck we do about versioning. So if I go back to our fabulous FAQ and I go to preparing for Prime and technology use, you can actually get to it from the main menu here of just technology use. And I look at what are Prime's computer requirements. Take a close look at this. One of the big things is there's hardware requirements and there's also software requirements. We are an in-person remote full stack cohort. So this has information about the UX program. That's not for us. It has information about the full stack software engineering program. That's us. And then specifically remotes. Our computers are being asked to do a little bit more to handle Zoom and Slack and all those things too, screen shares, things like that. One of the things to notice is there's specific models of laptops hardware-wise, but we also want to make sure that you are on OS X Ventura, Mac OS Ventura. So if you click on the Apple in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, keyboard shortcut's going wild. You know, green highlighter and a black background doesn't work very well, but there's an Apple up there. And do about this Mac. You might see a slightly different screen depending on what version you're on, but you want to look for Mac OS and you want it to say Ventura or Sonoma. If it says Ventura, great, don't touch it. You don't want to upgrade to Sonoma during Prime. Generally, you don't want to upgrade your computer when you have a lot of stuff going on. But if you have something other than those two, something earlier than Ventura, you're going to want to make sure you upgrade to Mac OS Ventura. All right. Hopefully this helps you get oriented. Please, 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 please throw any extra questions you have in Slack and make really good use of the FAQ resource we pointed to earlier. Preparing for Prime, full stack program, Mac OS getting started guide. All right. Looking forward to seeing y'all in lecture.